everybody, my name is Banks Bonkor, and I actually shop secondhand. I always have, and I probably always will. I find it super affordable, fun, and honestly, it just makes a lot of sense for me. A lot of my favorite outfits have a story, and most of them didn't come from a mall. But beyond style, there's definitely a bigger reason I shop secondhand. My claim is this: Americans should stop supporting fast fashion because it's extremely bad for the environment. Fast fashion is all about making clothes fast and cheap to keep up with trends. Stores push out new styles every week and tempt people with extremely low prices. The problem is that these clothes weren't built to last, and once they fall apart or go out of style, people immediately toss them in the trash. In 2022, the global fashion industry actually made a massive $103 billion, and it's expected to hit $291 billion by 2032. Big brands you might have heard of like H&M, Zara, and Shein are leading this charge and pushing out new products at extremely high speeds, all in the name of keeping up with latest fashion trends. I will now dive into the support for my claim, which is that fast fashion has a huge impact on the environment because it uses 1.35% of the world's oil. This might not sound like a lot, but it's still a huge chunk of our planet's resources. On top of that, the industry is responsible for about 35% of the microplastics floating around in our ocean. So those synthetic fibers in our clothes, they're actually breaking down into tiny plastic particles that pollute water and also harm marine life. It's incredibly wasteful as well. Every year, over 11 million tons of clothes end up in US landfills due to fast fashion. We buy these cheap clothes, wear them a few times, and then toss them out irresponsibly, only to buy more. It's a never-ending cycle, truly. And I haven't even gotten started on how fast fashion depletes natural resources. It takes around 2,700 liters of water, which is the same amount a person needs to drink for 900 days, to make just one cotton t-shirt. And this is just for cotton, which already takes up 2% of the world's croplands and uses up an incredible amount of pesticides. Furthermore, you might hear companies claiming that they're trying to be more eco-friendly, but a lot of it is just greenwashing, which is a term in which companies pretend to be sustainable, but they don't actually make real changes. A great example is H&M, which has actually been caught red-handed in their greenwashing practices. They market products like organic clothing, but a lot of documentary proof has shown that the company's factories actually pollute rivers and misrepresent their sustainability efforts. It's truly about looking good to their consumers, while they don't actually fix the deep root problem in the production process. So even when companies are pushing for recycling, like H&M's clothing recycling program that they do have, it's often just a way to keep the fast fashion cycle going. In H&M's case, you bring in your old clothes for a discount, but they still encourage you to buy new ones and keep their profits high. It's honestly a marketing trick and doesn't do anything for the environment. On top of this, fast fashion doesn't just harm the environment, but it also affects the poorest countries in our globe. These nations are hit hardest by climate change, even though they actually contribute the least to global warming. For example, the 74 lowest income countries only produce 10% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. However, they will bear the brunt of climate change and experience 8 times more natural disasters than they did in the 1980s. People in countries like Bangladesh are dealing with polluted water from textile production, and it makes it very unsafe to drink, which can lead to diseases like cholera. Meanwhile, the workers in fast fashion, sweatshops, and factories are often paid next to nothing. In Bangladesh, for instance, many workers earn about $38 a month. That is barely enough to survive. These workers are the backbone of the fast fashion industry, but truly, they are often exploited and paid poverty wages. The first warrant I included in my argument was that we all know that fast fashion plays a huge role in the global economy. Here's some backing I used for this warrant. In 2022, the fast fashion industry was worth over $106 billion, and it's expected to hit $185 billion by 2027. Brands I mentioned like H&M and Zara are leading that charge, with Zara being worth $15 billion in 2022. Zara is owned by Inditex, which is a Spanish company that turns around styles very quickly and restocks every 2 weeks. On top of this, my second warrant I included was that since the rise of the internet, we all know that many people have started online shopping, including myself. The global fashion e-commerce market is worth $780 billion, and it's expected to double in 6 years. China and US are the biggest players, and platforms like Toulmin are becoming increasingly popular, for cheap online fashion shopping. In terms of the counter-arguments and rebuttals I used in my argument, the first I mentioned is that some people argue that synthetic fibers like polyester help reduce the pressure on natural fibers like cotton, but this is not true. Actually, about 30% of man-made fibers come from endangered forests, and synthetic fibers are essentially plastic. They can take 500 to 1,000 years to break down, and when they do, they pollute the earth and water. Plus, when we burn these synthetic fibers, they release very toxic chemicals into the air, which is extremely harmful to both the environment and human health. Another argument that people have is that fast fashion helps developing countries by creating jobs. But this truly does not tell the whole story and is untrue. The jobs that are created often come with terrible working conditions and extremely unlivable wages. While it's true that they can help drive the economy, the environmental damage caused by fast fashion factories dumping toxic waste into local water bodies, like rivers, is very devastating. So you might be asking, what can we do about this issue? As I said before, as someone who's been secondhand shopping for years, I can tell you it's one of the best ways to reduce your environmental impact. Buying used clothes gives them a new and second life. I find it super fun, and they keep clothing out of landfills. Thrift stores I like are ThredUp and Poshmark. They're super affordable and eco-friendly options. Another piece of advice I have is actually to wear your clothes for as long as possible. The longer you wear something, the less waste you create. And I think if we all create small changes in the way that we shop, we can break the fast fashion cycle and make a real difference in protecting the planet. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.